Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi and we're bringing you this special broadcast of top stories from our studios here in the National Capital Region, styled exclusively by none other than Paul Moore, ladies and gentlemen. We've got an expansive list of stories for all of us to cover. Of course, we're going to throw some light on the Russia-Ukraine stalemate. We'll also talk about the Ukraine's new shark drones. Of course, Pakistan's Supreme Court has now come out, put a date on its general elections. This even as Afghans in Pakistan are facing at uncertainty vis-a-vis deportation. Switzerland's gay rights, that's something that we're going to talk about as well. Apart from that, stories of climate change and other global developments. But first and foremost, day 27 of the Israel-Gaza war in the conflict-ridden region in West Asia. Now, the war between Israel and Hamas has entered the 27th day. Let's take a look at the latest in the Israel-Hamas war. At least 9,061 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. This includes 3,760 children and 2,326 women. Another 32,000 are injured and about 940 children are reported missing. Meanwhile, 195 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on the Jabalia refugee camp over Tuesday and Wednesday. 18 Israeli Defense Forces soldiers have been killed in the ground ops inside the Gaza Strip so far. IDF says that dozens of Hamas fighters have been killed in the overnight operations. Meanwhile, United States President Joe Biden, he's come out and said that there should be a pause in the Gaza Strip to enable release of hostages. Now, according to the Israeli Defense Forces, total hostages in the Gaza Strip, that particular number currently stands at 242. Meanwhile, Anthony Blinken is expected to visit Tel Aviv on Friday. More diplomacy around this particular conflict. Israel's UN envoy has come out and said that Hamas has intentions like the Nazis. Meanwhile, people from 60 nationalities are going to be evacuated via the Rafah crossing, which is now open and the only border that is not governed by Israel. And just like we mentioned, the Israeli Defense Forces announced the death of a senior officer during the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Lieutenant Colonel Salman Habaka, 33 years old, the commander of the 188th Armored Brigade's 53rd Battalion from Yanujat, was killed battling Hamas terrorists in the northern part of Gaza. Separately, a reservist of the 679th Yiftah Brigade, a Givati soldier, and a combat engineer soldier was seriously wounded in overnight operations in the northern part of the Strip. Also, a soldier of the Border Defense Corps, Karakal Battalion, was seriously wounded in an incident on the Egyptian border. No further details have been given on these particular circumstances. Now, senior officer of the IDF, Habaka, is the most senior officer to have been killed during the IDF's ground operation in the Gaza Strip. His death brings the toll to 18 soldiers killed during the ground offensive and 333 since the beginning of war. The heaviest loss of life occurred when a Namur armored personal carrier was hit by an anti-tank guided missile. The attack killed 11 soldiers and wounding several others. In a separate incident, a number of soldiers were killed when their vehicle struck a mine, and in another, 2 soldiers died when a rocket-propelled grenade hit the building that they were inside. The Hamas has been engaged in asymmetric warfare with the IDF and have been using rockets and anti-tank missiles to target Israel's Merkava tanks and armored personnel carriers. Hamas has been using hit-and-run tactics to inflict casualties on the Israeli Defense Forces. Meanwhile, tensions escalate as missiles continue to rain down on Gaza, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. In a harrowing turn of events, missiles pummel Gaza on Tuesday night as Israel's military campaign persists with no clear resolution in sight. The United States and other nations are now exploring potential options for the future of the region. On the other hand, Israeli tanks have been on the offensive in Gaza for over 4 days now, following weeks of airstrikes and bombardment of the Gaza Strip. The latest airstrikes tragically struck a densely populated refugee camp, claiming the lives of at least 50 Palestinians. And as Israeli forces continue to dismantle the front defense lines of Hamas, this in the northern Gaza Strip, Israel's military spokesman, Daniel Hagari, has said that the number of people confirmed to be held hostage in Gaza stands at 242. So far, 242 families of 242 hostages have been notified. I repeat, 242 hostages. We're committed to the national task to return them all home. The forces continue to dismantle the front defense lines of Hamas in the northern Gaza and to take control of central areas. We continue to intensify our operation and to advance according to plan and to the targets that we've set. The battle is ongoing as we've planned. In each battle, we have the upper hand, and that's how we move forward. We continue to fiercely defend our northern border and to strike from the air and land any attempt to shoot or infiltrate into Israel. I want to highlight that IDF is on high preparedness to respond to anyone who attempts to destabilize the security situation in the north. We are highly prepared on the northern border. But even as we're talking about the IDF's preparedness, let's also throw some light on the weaponry that Hamas has in its arsenal. Now, Hamas gets its weapons through a combination of guile, improvisation, tenacity, and an important overseas benefactor in the shape of Iran. However, many experts suspect that Hamas has indirect benefactors in Russia and China, and some of their weaponry is smuggled via Iran to Hamas. Now, Hamas particularly uses homemade rockets, mainly Qassam and Saria al-Quds rockets. Hamas also employs the use of altered Russian and Chinese firearms, according to experts. Hamas has the Soviet-built DSHK, the .50 caliber machine gun as well. And Hamas modifies their AK-47s to make it lighter for all of the Hamas terrorists to use. Hamas even uses rockets made out of water pipes and Kalashnikovs as well. And Hamas also possesses GPS-guided grenade drones and missile systems. The terrorist organization also used paragliders in its attack on Israel, most likely trained in Iran. And the Hamas has Cornet, the Concourse, and Bullseye-2 anti-tank missiles. It also deploys the IGLA-S air defense systems. And Hamas has unmanned underwater vehicles, according to experts as well. It also has electronic warfare units in place to counter surveillance coming in from the Israeli side. Meanwhile, in the latest updates from the Gaza war zone, the death toll in the Gaza Strip has risen to 9,061. Gaza Health Ministry has reported that over 3,700 children have lost their lives in the Gaza Strip since the commencement of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Meanwhile, the United Nations Humanitarian Office reports at least 123 Palestinians, including 34 children, that have been killed in the Israeli-occupied West Bank since the 7th of October. However, the independent verification of these figures still remains a challenge for everybody. And as part of the ongoing conflict, Israel's cautious approach in the Gaza offensive aims to minimize casualties, leading to a prolonged campaign. The strategy involves gradual ground movements and airstrikes, avoiding intense urban battles and tunnels where Hamas terrorists are concealed. While reducing immediate military losses, this method raises international concerns over Gaza's humanitarian crisis that has displaced 60% of its population. Efforts are on to negotiate hostage releases, but meanwhile, reports suggest that those negotiations have stalled, and criticism mounts over civilian casualties that have been caused by the Israeli bombings. And in the heart of Gaza's Khan Yunis, families seek refuge and medical care in crowded school classrooms as hospitals grapple with overwhelming patient numbers. Gaza's hospitals are struggling to cope with the surge of patients, leaving families like Salva Najjar's in urgent need of help. Najjar, who lost a child in the same Israeli airstrike, calls for assistance as she cares for her partially paralyzed son, on the other hand. Meanwhile, hundreds of mourners joined a funeral procession through Jenin on Wednesday for 3 Palestinians killed during an Israeli morning raid. The 3 were killed when heavy clashes erupted after dozens of Israeli military vehicles and 2 bulldozers entered Jenin and the adjacent refugee camp. Another Palestinian man was killed in a separate raid in Tulkarm. But amidst all of this, a small, slight, sleek glimmer of hope. Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza opened on the 1st of November after mediation from Qatar between Israel, Hamas and Egypt. Egypt's foreign ministry has said that Egypt will help evacuate about 7,000 foreigners and dual nationals from the Gaza Strip. In a meeting with foreign diplomats, Assistant Foreign Minister Ismail Khairat said Egypt was preparing, quote-unquote, to facilitate the reception and evacuation of foreign citizens from Gaza through the Rafah crossing. He added that the number at about 7,000, representing more than 60 nationalities, are going to be evacuated. Several hundred foreign passport holders left Gaza through Rafah crossing yesterday as well. Now, if you remember, just a couple of days back, there was a proper anti-Israel protest that took place in Dagestan, the North Caucasus in Russia. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said that Israel's recommendation that its citizens must leave Russia's North Caucasus region after the violent anti-Israeli protest in Dagestan on Sunday was in fact anti-Russian in nature. In a briefing with reporters, Zakharova said that the Israeli warning against travel in the mostly Muslim regions of North Caucasus bore, quote-unquote, no relation to reality. Dozens were arrested after hundreds of protesters stormed Makachalka airport in Dagestan on Sunday, looking for Jewish passengers on board a plane arriving from Tel Aviv.
We consider this as some kind of an anti-Russian move that is misleading people of Israel. Seems like such actions and statements are aimed against our country. They have no relation to reality. The reality is the reaction that was shown by our country at all levels, governmental, societal, and by all levels of government after the events. Moreover, Dagestan itself at all levels, from the representatives of all faiths to members of public, spoke out after these events, saying it was a massive shame for the region. Our reaction was obvious and said it all for itself.
And now shifting our focus to some other global developments. Russia's war against Ukraine has been going on for nearly 2 years now. The war seems to be stuck in a deadlock and is seemingly endless. Ukraine's General Valery Zaluzhny, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in an interview with The Economist, says the Russia-Ukraine war is stuck in a stalemate. He says the war is unwinnable, but Russia isn't backing down. Now, Russia, it has lost about 1.5 lakh soldiers in the war, but Russia doesn't seem to care about the casualties. He also went on to say that technological limits exhibited inside the war is another reason for the stalemate, and how technological advancements has put both Russia and Ukraine in a sort of a stupor. He also went on to say the same level of technology creates a deadlock in the Ukraine-Russia war. And even though Russia has superior military and economic power, the stalemate exists. Now, General Zaluzhny also said that Western weapons sent to Ukraine allow it to sustain the war but not win it. On the other hand, the West held back long-range missile systems and tanks to Ukraine. Another information that General Zaluzhny put out in front of the world. The lack of these weapons allowed Russia to regroup in the war. Now, Ukraine is trying to prevent the war from settling into various trenches, is another factor that one has to place the right kind of importance on. A long war favors Russia because of its economic heft and manpower. But what is needed to win the war is a big question. Experts say a new innovation is pertinent to win this war. Experts believe this war needs a new breakthrough, like the one that was brought about by the use of gunpowder, a revolutionary innovation that potentially changed the shape of the war in present and in all future wars. And that, according to experts, is the need of the day. Meanwhile, Russia has shelled more than 100 settlements over the last 24 hours, more than in any single day so far this year. Ukraine has said, as its commander-in-chief warns the war with Russia is moving towards a new stage of static and attritional fighting, a phase that could allow Moscow to rebuild its military power. It comes amid reports that North Korea has supplied Russia with 2 months' worth of artillery shells. The Russians have fired millions of shells on cities, towns and villages since invading in February 2022, reducing several settlements to rubble across the eastern part of Ukraine. Ukraine also reported a Russian attack on an oil refinery in Kremenchuk, a central industrial city. There were no casualties, but it took almost 100 firefighters and several hours to put out the resulting fire. The overnight shelling in the northeastern Kharkiv region killed one person and another was killed in the southern Kherson region. But since Russia's invasion in early 2022, Ukraine has seen the emergence of a growing domestic drone program. And this program has led to the development of various attack and reconnaissance drones, including the significant role played by the Shark drone in combat. Have a look.
As well as looking mean, this new drone gives Ukrainian forces a cutting edge to find enemy positions. Attached with a powerful zoom camera, the Shark drone can make out text while flying more than a mile above ground. Here's drone pilot Soliara.
I basically say that the Shark drone is the iPhone among drones of this type. Firstly, it is very easy to maintain, very easy to manage, and errors that may occur due to human factors are eliminated by control mechanisms in both software and hardware. We are basically flying without losses.
Field teams can pinpoint coordinates of targets for artillery units to attack from a safer distance in a control van. Artillery dominates the battlefield in this war, and thousands of shells are fired by Ukrainian and Russian forces every day. Soldier Kenobi explains the success they've had.
About a month after I started working with the Sharks, we found an air defence complex. We struck it, and it was very spectacular. Yes, this is what I remember the most.
Ukraine's domestic drone program has soared since Russia invaded in early 2022, producing a range of attack and reconnaissance UAVs that have played an increasingly important role in battle along front lines stretching over 600 miles. One Shark costs only $50,000 to make, and local manufacturing means they're easy to repair.
It's quite resistant to electronic warfare. This has been tested many times. The technology behind returning it home is very well thought out because it can work without GPS at all. The fact that the Russians are trying to jam GPS signals, well, we don't give a hoot.
Meanwhile, shifting our focus to Pakistan, where general elections to the country are going to be held on the 11th of February in 2024. Pakistan's Election Commission informed their Supreme Court today about the same. This puts an end to the months-long uncertainty over the polls. The Supreme Court of Pakistan also directed the Election Commission of Pakistan to confer with the President Arif Alvi on the poll date. Now, the Election Commission of Pakistan's counsel, Sajil Swati, said the process of drawing constituencies will be completed by January 29th next year, paving the way for the polls. Next up, and in Switzerland, where it has amended blood donation criteria for men who have sexual relations with other men, making ineligibility criteria the same for homosexuals and heterosexuals. Until 2017, gay men were systematically barred from giving blood in Switzerland.
Gabriel de la Bay is one of the first gay men in Switzerland to give blood without extra restrictions on Wednesday. Switzerland amended blood donation criteria for men who have sexual relations with other men, making ineligibility criteria the same for homosexuals and heterosexuals.
It's a small page in a history book that says, on November 1st, 2023, Switzerland allowed homosexuals to donate their blood more easily. I don't think we should think only as a community, but it's good to break barriers and to promote the right things to do.
Until 2017, gay men were systematically barred from giving blood in Switzerland. It was a policy dating back to the start of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 1980s. Since then, men sexually active with other men were allowed to donate blood only if 12 months had passed since their last homosexual encounter. Now, under the new restrictions, a 4-month waiting period applies to all people after their last sexual encounter with a new partner, or a 12-month waiting period if sexual contacts have taken place with more than 2 partners within the last 4 months. Some other European countries have no restrictions preventing men who have sexual relations with men from giving blood. France removed additional restrictions on gay blood donors last year.
And in the United States, Donald Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., recently testified in a trial that might cause some trouble for his father and former U.S. president's business. The trial, brought by New York's Democratic Attorney General Letitia James, is accusing Trump, his 2 grown-up sons, and a few of their family businesses of boosting their assets by a lot of money to get better loan deals. Trump Jr. basically said he didn't have much to do with the financial documents in the family's real estate company. It's a big legal showdown that could affect the former president's business empire.
Donald Trump Jr. took the witness stand in the civil fraud trial against his father's business empire on Wednesday. He told a Manhattan court that he had little to do with financial practices that are at the heart of the case. His father, former U.S. President Donald Trump, and his family businesses are accused of inflating asset values to dupe lenders and insurers. Donald Jr., an executive vice president at the Trump Organization and a co-defendant in the case, is the first of Trump's adult children to testify, followed by Eric and Ivanka Trump. Their father is set to testify on Monday. Donald Jr. said he and Eric largely took over management of the company when their father assumed the presidency in 2017. His testimony could continue into Thursday and be another flashpoint in a trial punctuated by sharp exchanges between lawyers and witnesses and heated arguments over the admissibility of evidence. The lawsuit by Democratic New York Attorney General Letitia James accuses Trump, his 2 adult sons, and a handful of their family businesses of inflating their assets by billions of dollars to secure better loan terms. Trump has denied wrongdoing and has repeatedly accused James and the judge of political bias. James is seeking at least $250 million in fines, a permanent ban against Trump and his 2 adult sons from running businesses in New York, and a 5-year commercial real estate ban against Trump and the Trump Organization.
And news coming in from Africa's Kenya, where survivors of colonial-era abuses in Kenya have voiced criticism against the UK's King Charles, stating that his expression of quote-unquote deepest regret for what he called quote-unquote abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence falls short of their expectations. Take a look.
Britain's King Charles may have expressed his deepest regret for colonial-era abuses in Kenya. But for some, it's not enough. Gideon Mungai was an underground operative during the 1952 to 1960 Mau Mau revolt, which was brutally put down by British colonial forces.
His expression of regret, without apologizing, means he is still holding back. Let him withhold whatever it is. His government tortured us.
Some 90,000 Kenyans were killed or maimed in the period known as the emergency, according to the Kenya Human Rights Commission. 160,000 were detained, with many subjected to torture. Mungai and other survivors have criticized Charles's failure to issue a full apology or propose reparations.
What would make me even happier in my old age is the return of the grabbed land. I may not be able to benefit from it, but my descendants will be proud of our struggle.
United Nations investigators have also said that British colonialists committed gross human rights violations against hundreds of thousands of people in western Kenya over decades. That included land expropriation, killings, and sexual violence. In downtown Nairobi on Wednesday, resident Nicholas Mwangai said Kenya still bears the scars.
Him saying they only regret and not offering an official apology goes a long way to show that they hardly acknowledge the kind of past the British monarch and colonialism has caused this country. And the consequence of colonialism continue to shape our lives today.
Charles expressed his regret during a state dinner on Tuesday, in which he described colonial-era abuses as abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence. The UK agreed to pay a $24 million settlement in 2013 to more than 5,200 survivors of abuses during the emergency. But it has refused to issue an apology and has rebuffed claims by other communities. Paul Muite, a senior Kenyan lawyer who represented Mau Mau veterans in the 2013 case, said there were more than 2,000 additional victims of abuses during the emergency who did not receive compensation. The royal visit also comes at a time when Britain is under pressure to do more to recognize colonial-era abuses. Some, notably Barbados and Jamaica, have been re-evaluating their ties to the monarchy. In Kenya on Tuesday, President William Ruto praised what he called a highly encouraging first step to go beyond the tentative and equivocal half measures of past years. But for some in Kenya, and indeed across other former colonies, the UK is not yet doing enough.
Next up, take a look at this. Boeing is investigating a potential cyber attack and dealing with a ransom demand as it works with law enforcement agencies. An apparent attack targeted its parts and distribution business, and the cybercrime group Lockbit claimed to have stolen sensitive data, demanding a ransom that has since disappeared from their website. Let's hear the entire report first.
Boeing is investigating a cyber incident and faces a ransom demand. The aerospace and defence giant said Wednesday it was working with law enforcement following an apparent attack on its parts and distribution business. Days earlier, a cybercrime gang calling itself Lockbit said it had stolen a tremendous amount of sensitive data from the firm. It said it would dump the data online if Boeing didn't pay a ransom by Thursday. The demand later disappeared from the gang's website, and the plane maker wouldn't say if Lockbit was behind the cyber incident. Boeing said flight safety was not affected in any way. It did not disclose whether any defense-related data had been compromised. US watchdogs say Lockbit was the most active global ransomware group last year. It has reportedly hit 1,700 US organizations since 2020. The gang typically uses software to lock up a target firm's systems or steals sensitive data to use for extortion. Cyber experts say even paying the ransom demand would not guarantee that Lockbit actually returned or deleted the stolen data.
Well, now, how has Latin America been celebrating the Day of the Dead? The annual festival commemorates the dead and celebrates the continuity of life. In Cuba, local and Mexican artists brought their skeletons out and brought them literally to life during a vibrant parade. There was also an altar dedicated to prominent Cuban and Mexican figures.
In Mexico, the Day of the Dead is a reminder of the people who the living have spent time with, who were part of their lives. It is important for Mexican culture and for Mexican families. I think that we Cubans relate to it through the African religions, because in a way they're related to death through gods that are with us.
esas deidades que
As good Cubans, it is part of our culture and idiosyncrasy.
de nuestra cultura, de nuestra idiosincrasia también como buenos cubanos.
Tenemos la representación en el pan.
The bread of the Tantawawa represents the deceased, and in the offering we put their bodies, which is the bread, hoping that the soul will recognize their body and try to come back to us and visit us. That means that a very dear person is visiting us, and that he was a very important person among us.
Seguramente una persona importante entre nosotros.
Well, next up, stories from domestic politics back at home. How are political chess pieces really moving on the political chessboard? All of this ahead and in the run-up to the 5 assembly elections and the general elections next year. But will there be, or is there a rift in the INDIA, the opposition bloc? This, as Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar says, the Congress party is more interested in the upcoming elections than having a united front against the BJP. Nitish Kumar also said that the alliance was to give a structure, but nothing much is happening on that front. He also added that Congress will require everyone after the 5 state elections get over.
आज जो केंद्र में सरकार है उसकी आजादी से कोई लेना देना नहीं। और देश में आजादी की जो लड़ाई हुई और राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी बापू को तो ये लोग भुलवाना चाह रहे हैं, खत्म कर देना चाह रहे हैं हर चीज को। तो इसलिए जरूरत है इस बात की, और इसलिए हम लोगों ने सभी दलों के साथ जो बातचीत की हम लोगों ने भी, और कहा कि जरा एकजुट होइए और जो देश के इतिहास को बदल रहे हैं उसको बचाइए, और इससे मुक्ति पाना है तो इसलिए सब एकजुट होकर के करिए। तो इसके लिए पटना में भी मीटिंग हुई, अन्य जगहों पर भी मीटिंग हुई, और उसके बाद ये तय हो गया कि भाई एक INDIA, इंडियन नेशनल डेवलपमेंटल इंक्लूसिव अलायंस का गठन किया गया, इसका नामकरण किया गया है। अब ये तो हो ही गया, तेजी से हो, लेकिन अभी तो काम ज्यादा नहीं हो रहा। अभी 5 जगह विधानसभा का चुनाव है, तो कांग्रेस पार्टी तो उसी में ज्यादा इंटरेस्टेड है। तो अभी तो जिसको हम लोग कांग्रेस पार्टी को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए हम लोग सब एक दूसरे से काम कर रहे थे, लेकिन अभी उनको कोई इस सब चीज की चिंता है नहीं। अभी तो लगे हुए हैं 5 राज्य के चुनाव, इसलिए 5 राज्य का चुनाव होगा, उसके बाद अपने सबको बुलावेंगे। आजकल कभी कोई चर्चा नहीं हो रही। तो चलिए अब जो कुछ भी होता रहे, हम तो देश को एकजुट करने के लिए और देश के इतिहास को जो बदलना चाहते हैं उसको ठीक करने के लिए, और इनसे जो आज है शासन उनसे मुक्ति के लिए कर रहे हैं, तो आगे भी हम लोग करेंगे। अभी 5 जगह का विधानसभा का चुनाव हो रहा, उसके बाद ही फिर बैठ करके जो कुछ भी होगा।
Now, interesting to note here that these comments come at a day when Sushil Modi hit out at Nitish Kumar for giving out those 1.2 lakh of employment and appointment offers, saying that, well, even in the next 25 years, Nitish Kumar is not going to be able to fulfill that number. But this has certainly given fodder to the BJP to come out. The BJP has hit out against the alliance, said that the alliance is without a direction and it's leaderless. Listen in.
देखिए, ये इंडी गठबंधन दरअसल टुकड़े टुकड़े गठबंधन है, और राहुल जी को भारत जोड़ो यात्रा नहीं, इंडी जोड़ो यात्रा निकालनी चाहिए। क्योंकि जिस प्रकार से अभी तो समाजवादी पार्टी बनाम कांग्रेस पार्टी मध्य प्रदेश में चल रहा था, एक दूसरे को छुटवैया नेता, चिरकुट नेता कह रहे थे। आज बिहार के मुख्यमंत्री नीतीश जी ने जिस प्रकार से हमला बोला है कांग्रेस पर, इससे पहले आम आदमी पार्टी बनाम कांग्रेस दिल्ली से लेकर पंजाब में, पश्चिम बंगाल में अधीर रंजन चौधरी जी बनाम ममता बनर्जी, तृणमूल कांग्रेस बनाम लेफ्ट, केरल में कांग्रेस बनाम लेफ्ट तो चल ही रहा था, वहां पर दोनों की कुश्ती, मुंबई में करते हैं दोस्ती, और जिस प्रकार से कर्नाटक और तमिलनाडु की सरकार भी पानी को लेकर लड़ रही थी, तो इसका मतलब यह है कि इस गठबंधन में कोई मिशन या विजन नहीं है, जैसे पीएम मोदी मिशन और विजन के साथ काम करते हैं। इस गठबंधन में केवल कॉन्ट्रडिक्शन, कंफ्यूजन, करप्शन, एम्बिशन और एक दूसरे के प्रति इस प्रकार का फ्रस्ट्रेशन है, और इसलिए बार बार एक दूसरे को गाली देना, ताने मारना, नीचे और पीछे खींचना। अभी तक इस गठबंधन में ना लोगो बन पाया है, ना लोगों के लिए क्या करना है वो तय हो पाया है, ना नेता तय हो पा रहा है, ना नीति तय हो पा रही है। केवल अपने अपने एम्बिशन को कैसे आगे करना है, प्रधानमंत्री पद की कुर्सी जो खाली नहीं है उसमें अपने आप को कैसे दावेदार बताना है और कैसे सीटों के लिए लड़ना है, इसका एक और ट्रेलर आज सामने निकल कर आया है। मुझे लगता है कि इंडी जोड़ो यात्रा की सख्त जरूरत है। राहुल जी को इंडी जोड़ो यात्रा निकालनी चाहिए। हाँ, एक मुद्दे पर ये एक मत है कि हिंदू और सनातन को कैसे गाली देनी है, अपमान करना है।
Meanwhile, moving on, Mahua Moitra and other opposition party MPs walked out of the Parliamentary Ethics Committee meeting in the cash for query case, questioning the way the meeting was being conducted. Now, Moitra hit out at the panel, saying it had anything but ethics to showcase.
Asking also the big questions. All the MPs are.
People are walking out in protest.
What happened? He's reading from a script. This is an ethics committee. What happened? Reading from a script. Asking also the big questions. All the MPs are. Where are the beards and bags? You're making up any rubbish. Tears in your eyes. You see my eyes and the tears in it. Then what are you talking shit for? Tears in my eyes. Where's my card?
बाबा जी, आपको अपना पक्ष रखने का मौका मिला।
हम लोग बात करते हैं। हाँ, है कि कोई सरकार के खिलाफ या किसी बिजनेस हाउस के खिलाफ ना बोले, कि क्या मतलब? और इस तरीके का डॉक्टरी का चीर हरण कराने के लिए एथिक्स कमेटी थोड़ी है क्या? मैम, वो नहीं बोले, हम लोगों ने। आप जाइए ना, घर जाइए, आप किसी को मत पूछिए। देखिए, उन्होंने अनैतिक सवाल पूछा, महिला से अनैतिक सवाल पूछा, उसका हम लोगों ने विरोध किया। अब इससे आगे क्या बोले? तो एथिक्स कमेटी में अब आप वो स्पीकर तय करेगा। सवाल किसने पूछेगा? सोनकर साहब ने। और चेयरमैन नाम नहीं जानते। चेयरमैन ने अनैतिक सवाल।
So those were pictures when a fuming Mahua Moitra walked out of that particular panel meeting. It was basically to understand the cash for query case, and she wasn't alone. Danish Ali and several other members of parliament over there as well. Now the complainant Nishikant Dubey and ethics panel chief Vinod Sonkar, they defended their own positions.
गलत नैरेटिव बनाने का प्रयास किया, और आज जो कुछ भी हुआ ये संसदीय इतिहास का सबसे काला दिन है। ये मुझे याद आ रहा है कि कांग्रेस और उसके समर्थित दल डेमोक्रेसी में कैसा विश्वास करते हैं। यदि आपको ध्यान हो तो 2G में जब पब्लिक अकाउंट्स कमेटी डॉक्टर मुरली मनोहर जोशी जी के नेतृत्व में रिपोर्ट अडॉप्ट करना चाहती थी, तो यही कांग्रेस के सारे सांसद टेबल को तोड़ दिए, नाचने लगे, फाड़ दिया कमेटी के अंदर, और डॉक्टर मुरली मनोहर जोशी जैसे बुजुर्ग आदमी का, सम्मानित आदमी का, एक मंझे हुए पॉलिटिशियन का जो है कांग्रेस ने अपमान किया। 2G की रिपोर्ट उन्होंने पीएससी की नहीं आने दी आज तक। ठीक आज जो कुछ भी हुआ उसी तरह से, चूंकि एक अनुसूचित जाति से आने वाला व्यक्ति एथिक्स कमेटी का चेयरमैन कैसे हो गया? विनोद सोनकर जी अनुसूचित जाति के हैं, और वो एथिक्स कमेटी के चेयरमैन कैसे हो गए, ये उन लोगों को पच नहीं रहा है, और उनके खिलाफ अनर्गल बयानबाजी हुई।
कमेटी द्वारा इस जांच का उद्देश्य था कि जो महुआ मोइत्रा के द्वारा जो अनैतिक आचरण का किया गया है, जो उनके ऊपर अनैतिक आचरण का आरोप है, उसकी विस्तृत गहन जांच करना। महुआ मोइत्रा के द्वारा उसमें सहयोग करने के बजाय क्रोध से क्रोधित होके कमेटी के ऊपर, कमेटी के चेयरमैन के ऊपर अशब्दों का प्रयोग करते हुए और साथ ही साथ जो विपक्ष के जो ये लोग थे, दानिश अली हों, दूसरे जो बाकी सदस्य हैं, गिरधारी यादव और बाकी लोग, रेड्डी, इन सब लोगों ने बहुत ही क्रोध में और बहुत ही अनएथिकल बात करते हुए कमेटी पे आरोप लगाने का प्रयास किया। और जो उनसे उनके ऊपर कंप्लेन है हीरानंदानी जी का, जो उसके सवाल थे, उस सवाल से बचने के लिए उन्होंने इस पूरे विषय को वॉकआउट करने का काम किया।
And moving on, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today skipped the Enforcement Directorate summons. He stated that the ED notice is illegal and politically motivated. He also went on to add that the notice was sent at the request of the BJP with the intention of preventing him from participating in election campaigning in the 4 states. He has urged the Enforcement Directorate to withdraw the notice without delay. Now, Delhi Chief Minister decided not to appear before the Enforcement Directorate. Instead, he is left for the roadshow in Singrauli in Madhya Pradesh along with Punjab's Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann. Now, this is the second time that Arvind Kejriwal was summoned before an investigative agency in connection with the Delhi excise liquor policy case. In April this year, Kejriwal had appeared before the CBI for questioning as well. Now, Arvind Kejriwal's summon comes at a time when pretty much 3 Aam Aadmi Party leaders, Manish Sisodia, Sanjay Singh, Satyendra Jain, are already in jail because of their alleged links with the scam.
आज देश की संवैधानिक जांच एजेंसी आपको सवाल के कटघरे में जब खड़ा कर रही है तो आप भाग गए, आप प्रस्तुत नहीं होना चाहते। आपने अपने चिट्ठी में क्या लिखा है? चिट्ठी भी लेकर आया हूं। आपने अपने चिट्ठी में लिखा है मुझे किस हैसियत से बुलाया गया है, एक इंडिविजुअल के हैसियत से या ऑफिशियल कैपेसिटी एज चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ दिल्ली या नेशनल कन्वीनर ऑफ आम आदमी पार्टी, मुझे किस हैसियत से बुलाया गया है? अरे अरविंद केजरीवाल जी, ये जितने गागर बंद है ना अभी जेल के अंदर, चाहे वो मनीष सिसोदिया जी हो, चाहे वो संजय सिंह जी हो, चाहे वो सत्येंद्र जैन जी हो, ये सारे गागरों के सागर आप हैं। तो करप्शन के सागर के हैसियत से बुलाया गया है। आप जो जानना चाहते हैं कि किस हैसियत से आपको बुलाया गया है, as the ocean of corruption, as the source of corruption, from where corruption emerges in Delhi, जहां से करप्शन जन्म लेती है उसके बाद मनीष सिसोदिया जी तक पहुंचती है, जहां से उद्भव होता है करप्शन का और उसके बाद वो पहुंचती है सत्येंद्र जैन के पास, जहां से करप्शन आरंभ होता है और उसके बाद वो पहुंचती है संजय सिंह के द्वारे, उस सोर्स के रूप में आपको बुलाया गया है। एज दैट सागर, गागरों के सागर के रूप में आपको बुलाया गया है।
Meanwhile, the Supreme Court reserved its verdict in the bash of pleas challenging the legal validity of the electoral bond scheme that allows anonymous donations to political parties. The Supreme Court also asked the Election Commission of India to submit data up till September 30th this year regarding electoral bonds sold under the scheme. Earlier in the hearing, the Solicitor General of India, Tushar Mehta, representing the government, addressed the apprehensions of the court on donor confidentiality. He requested the court to criminalize any breach of electoral bond donor confidentiality by the State Bank of India and to not strike down the scheme at all.
Under this section, earlier provision was any amount or amounts contributed by it to any political party during the financial year.
My lord.
The reference to the political party is taken away first in 180.
Climate change. It's an important topic. Like I promised, we're going to talk about it every day. Next up, our segment on climate change. Well, first and foremost, take a look at this. The harrowing story of 22-year-old Maria del Rosario Saravia, who has been anxiously waiting for news of her missing family since the devastating Category 5 hurricane Otis struck Acapulco. The record-breaking storm has ripped apart homes and businesses and left the nearly 9 lakh residents of Acapulco in the dark.
22-year-old Maria del Rosario Saravia comes to wait at this dock every day for news of her mother, 2 brothers, and 4-year-old son, since she lost touch with them a week ago when the Category 5 Hurricane Otis struck the Mexican city of Acapulco.
Apparently, they stayed there on the boat at 11:40 p.m. I spoke to my mother, and she told me that they were fine. Then I couldn't communicate with her anymore. I lost signal. I can't communicate with her anymore. To this day, I have not been able to communicate with any of them. It was the last day I saw them, and I hope to see them again soon.
She says her mother, younger brother, and son were with her father, a fisherman, on his boat when the storm hit. Her elder brother, a boat captain, was on a separate boat, which has been missing since the storm. Saravia says her relatives were ordered by their bosses to look after the boats through the storm. Her father is the only one she has seen since.
They sank over there. My father was shipwrecked all night, but he doesn't know where my mother, my brother, and my baby are. He says they were with him, but the pressure of the water and the force of the air took them away. So we have been here since the first day looking for them, but we haven't heard from any of them. Nor have we had any support from any authority, government, or my father's employer.
Authorities say Otis was the most powerful storm to ever strike Mexico's Pacific coast. The record-breaking storm ripped apart homes and businesses and left the nearly 900,000 residents of Acapulco in the dark. At least 50 people were killed in the storm, and there is fear more bodies were swept out to sea, with the search effort ongoing. Help, divers, please help, the sign reads. Acapulco authorities have given few details on the dead and injured, but the state government says dozens are still missing. It's not clear if Saravia's family members are included in the tally. Mexico's government on Wednesday announced a $3.4 billion recovery plan for the battered city. But as many Acapulco residents begin to rebuild, Saravia says she will remain camped at the dock until she has answers.
We'll be here until we found our relatives. I can't say tomorrow we won't come because we don't know when we will find them. We'll be here until we find them.
Meanwhile, Britons woke up to the full force of Storm Ciarán's chaos this morning, with commuters being told to work from home while hundreds of schools closed down as a major incident was declared. The Met Office said very strong winds could batter southern coastal areas of England, where gusts of up to 70 to 80 miles per hour were possible, with a few exposed locations to be hit by storms exceeding 85 miles per hour. A tornado warning has been issued as a quote-unquote weather bomb. Now, Storm Ciarán has grounded flights and forced schools to close across the British Isles and Channel Islands. The warning issued by the Tornado and Storm Research Organization said the highest risk of tornado would be across South Wales to London. Meanwhile, China's decade-long war on air pollution has provided a world battling global warming with an answer to an invaluable experiment. What happens to the climate when a major coolant like sulfur dioxide is removed from the atmosphere? Now, sulfur dioxide, a smog component, creates cooling particles, potentially countering greenhouse warming. Recent cuts in China's emissions may have impacted sea temperatures, especially in Asia. Now, climate experts have closely monitored the impact of China's efforts to reduce marine fuel emissions since the year 2020, particularly in relation to record high sea temperatures. But the substantial reduction of sulfur dioxide emissions from China's vehicles and industrial sources over the past decade has the potential to cause significant warming effects, particularly in Asia. Now, Eurasia's tallest active volcano, the Klyuchevskaya Sopka, is spewing huge ash columns. Authorities have been forced to shut schools in 2 towns in Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula as a result. Now, ash reached 13 kilometers above the sea level after the volcano erupted. No injuries have been reported so far. Both towns, each with around 5,000 residents, were closed as a precaution. Now, the volcano has been releasing lava since the month of June, And Kamchatka Peninsula, known for its volcanoes, is about 6,700 kilometers east of Moscow. Meanwhile, back at home in the national capital, the rising pollution is certainly a cause of concern. It remains a cause of concern as the city grapples with persistently very poor air quality. Now, in the latest updates, Delhi's air quality index continued to hover in the very poor category for the 6th consecutive day. The air quality index was recorded above the 400 mark in some areas of the national capital, including Noida and Ghaziabad.
पहले की स्थिति से देखा जाए तो काफी ज़्यादा पोल्यूशन बढ़ती दिख रही है। पहले नॉर्मल चलना फिरना नॉर्मल था, अब तो सांस फूलने लगी आते जाते। और भी देखा जाए जैसे दिन पे दिन अभी तो दिवाली आई भी नहीं है और दिवाली के आने पे स्थिति और ज़्यादा खराब होने की मुझे आशंका लग रही है, क्योंकि अभी से इतना फॉग टाइप दिख रहा है सारे में, तो प्रॉब्लम तो है। पहले
दशहरा भी निकल चुका है, आगे दिवाली आ रही है, लेकिन इतना प्रदूषण हुआ जितना आज देखने को मिल रहा है भी ये पराली की वजह से, जो पराली को आग लगा रखी है उसकी वजह से इतनी ज़्यादा प्रदूषण हो रहा है कि लोगों को सांस लेने की बड़ी दिक्कत हो रही है, बच्चों में प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, बीमारी हो रही है और कोई ना कोई प्रॉब्लम चलती आ रही है। जैसे ही कि मैं आज मॉर्निंग टाइम में घर से बाहर निकला तो मैंने देखा मौसम में थोड़ा सा आज मुझे लगा कि प्रदूषण है, इसी वजह से मैं सैर कम कर सका। तो मैं सरकार से अपील करता हूँ कि जो भी ये किसान भाई पराली को आग लगा रहे हैं इसको रोका जाए, और हाँ, सेहत के लिए ये बहुत नुकसानदायक है।
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Top Stories. Lots more continues right on the other side. Don't go anywhere.